Good morning, everybody. My name is Lucas Brown. I am Chief Product Officer of Mobile App Tracking, and we're joined with John from URX, and today we're going to be talking about deep linking, a fundamental change in the mobile app ecosystem. So we're excited today to bring you this webinar. It's going to start, it's going to be about 30 minutes, and I'm passing it off to John here to introduce himself.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that intro, Lucas. Again, as you said, my name is John Milinovich. I'm the CEO and co-founder of URX, the mobile search engine for developers. And just as a quick reminder, so we scheduled today's webinar for 30 minutes, and we'll try to allow some time for questions at the end, time permitting. And slides and a recording of today's show will be available later this week, along with some other commentary that we'll both add. So again, in the next couple minutes, I'd love to just quickly talk over, at a high level, why deep linking matters, talk a little bit about the current landscape of deep linking, and then actually some of how you actually implement deep linking before handing it back over to Lucas to dive in there. So again, I think the stat of the day, and certainly something that's on the top of all of our minds as mobile marketers or mobile developers, is the fact that today, 60% of people's time on the internet is spent on their mobile devices. And of that time, the lion's share is actually spent within apps on their phone. So actually, for the first time, as of June 2014, ComScore reported that 52% of all digital time is spent within mobile apps, which represents just a huge shift in how people actually access information on the internet. But with this actually comes a fundamental challenge in how people actually have accessibility to the same information. Specifically because of the fact you actually have to install an app before you can access the information. It's hard to understand what is on a user's device or where to take somebody when they're looking for a specific piece of content. So today, one of the biggest challenges and specific reasons that this is a problem is because there's no URLs for apps. Meaning, if you can imagine what the web was like without Google or without the ability to actually take users to specific places in a website, that's kind of what the mobile ecosystem looks like today. Which is ultimately why deep linking has become such an important piece of the ecosystem today. Because what deep linking enables you to do is actually link to a specific part, page, or state within a mobile app, very similar to how things work on the web today. And again, this enables both marketers and developers to take users to the most rich mobile experience that they have access to while on their devices. And again, just making this a little bit more concrete, this is an example of what a web link looks like relative to the same deep link for that product. So as you can see, http www.guild.com/product123 can actually map to guild://product/123 using a mobile app deep link as opposed to just a traditional web link. Again, deep link adoption is growing, but is still very, very early in its growth trajectory. Today, only 22 of the top 200 apps actually use deep link tags today to enable their deep links to be discovered by other apps or marketers. And again, it's interesting to see that this is actually not evenly distributed across verticals of apps. And those apps that actually saw the earliest switch to mobile, so those in entertainment, lifestyle, music, news, and travel, actually have a much higher adoption of these tags than some of the more nascent categories in the mobile ecosystem. But again, this is something that is quickly changing, and that there's a very clear impetus for marketers and developers to push forward because of the fact that if you're not doing this today, you're actually not able to create the most rich consumer experience to actually re-engage your users while they're on their mobile devices. So kind of taking a moment to look at the current landscape and where some of the current players live today, it's been exciting to see over the last year and a half so many companies enter the ecosystem to actually help push deep linking forward. So again, within this ecosystem, you have the mobile engagement platforms who are focused on paid re-engagement for users. You have a ton of the conversion and analytics platforms that are ensuring you can actually attribute traffic through deep links back to their sources. You have all of these different open standards, marketing tools, and discovery platforms actually helping enable deep link discovery. as well as you have different app stores and operating systems helping push this forward. But also looking at some of what the mobile majors are doing, all of Google, Facebook, and Twitter have each also pushed forward their own initiatives around deep linking. So again, for Google, this is app indexing, where you can actually have deep links appear in search results that link users into mobile apps. You have Twitter cards, which actually lets you link from the Twitter stream directly into a mobile app, as well as app links, which lets one app link enabled app link into another app link enabled app, which has been pushed forward by Facebook within the last couple months. So again, diving into Twitter cards for a moment, Twitter cards is actually the first large deep link initiative pushed forward by a major company. And also the deep link tags that are being pushed by Twitter have also seen the widest adoption because of this. And again, the functionality that this enables is that when a user posts a link to an article or an item to Twitter, if another user looks at that while they're on their mobile devices and clicks on that item, actually be taken into the app. So if you look at this phone here on the right, a user might see a SeatGeek ticket that somebody tweeted out, upon clicking on it, just takes them directly into the SeatGeek application to the point where they can learn more about what they just clicked on. In a similar vein, Google's making a huge push to actually prioritize app indexing. And as you can see here, it's been something that's come up consistently as Google has faced challenges in actually making sure that their mobile CPC stays up to par with what they've seen on desktop. And again, what they see from the opportunity here is being able to always take users to the most relevant place to resolve their intent, independent of whether that's on an app or on a mobile website. In a similar fashion, Facebook's app links initiatives enables apps that support app links to actually link to each other. So what this means is that from both a developer perspective, I can link into another app, or I can actually receive traffic from another app if both parties actually use the App Links Open Standard, which was announced about a quarter ago at Facebook's F8 conference. And again, this is, from their perspective, an open cross-platform solution that enables this linking to actually happen in a way that couldn't really happen before outside of anybody else's ecosystem. So one of the things that's actually starting to be built on top of this new layer of deep linking is actually seen in this example from Google Maps linking to Uber. And again, this is a great example of creating a relevant and seamless experience between two apps that can actually share the intent of, for example, searching for directions and then actually being able to book an Uber to take you there. I think in this same fashion, right today, each app is actually in its own silo, as Taylor Davidson has pointed out in one of his recent blog posts. And really, one of the big opportunities with deep linking is to actually drive app discovery by both finding and linking to content within other apps on a user's device. And certainly that's very much what URX is focused on with our mobile search engine for developers. So in talking to a second for actually how you go about implementing deep links, the highest level, we think about this in 3 different steps. The first order is actually enabling deep links in your app. The second is then actually letting other apps or developers understand what your deep link structure is by exposing that on the internet. And then the third is actually being able to link users to the right location across your marketing campaigns. So again, to the point of enabling deep linking, this involves creating a custom URL scheme, which, if you remember the guilt example we used earlier, is that guilt : / registering it with the operating system, and then actually creating routes to different destinations within the app. Again, this is something that most mobile engineers are already familiar with, have either started to think about or have already implemented. And there's a ton of open source resources available to actually make this easier for people to do. And then actually exposing deep links. So as we talked about with both Google, Facebook, and Twitter's initiatives, there are these different meta tags that they've all proposed for developers to put onto their websites in order to make it easier to understand what a given app's deep link structure is. Basically, all of these actually make it easy to map a website's web URL to their equivalent deep link URL so that they can actually then know where to send users based on their user agent or what device that they're on. And then again, once you actually have your app set up to support deep linking, you've actually been able to expose your deep link structures to the web, they're actually then able to link users to the right location based on both the apps, whether they have your app installed on their phone or not. So again, from a single link, you can actually then take a user directly into the app if they have it installed, or link them to content in the browser, or alternatively take them to go install your app if they haven't already done so. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Lucas to talk a little bit about some deep linking best practices.
Hello, everybody. So to expand what John was talking about, there's three main best practices where deep links can really help improve the user experience and also the conversion process. The first one, as John talked about, is using deep links to improve the user experience. So in this example on the right, all recipes, or allthecooks.com, it's actually set up their Google listing to actually enable users that have the app installed to open the app. So this removes obvious steps. So instead of the user being in Google and then opening the app and then having to refine this recipe, they can click right from Google search and jump right into the app to the specific page they actually wanted. You can also use it to fill in known information about the user. Say they're logged in onto your desktop web in your mobile website, and you know that this user is this username is user123, and they're really interested in cars, and perhaps you know what kind of cars they like. You can actually push them over into the mobile app experience with taking into account that information that you know about them. So at the end of the day, if you want to use deep links to link to the most relevant screen in the app. If you are linking to the most relevant screen in the app, you can obviously increase conversion rates. So on the right here, this is Walmart. They've actually sent out an email campaign to people that are interested in Walmart, and when you click on this link, it's actually opening the Walmart app to the View Product page, and right at the bottom, the users can actually add to cart. So if we're working on getting people to the most relevant place in the app, we can also then limit the steps between a call to action and the user actually buying something in the in-app experience. So what we can try to think about doing is we need to using deep links to enable the user to do enabling deep links to do everything, so the user only has to click the Buy It Now button. The last remaining piece is using deep links for targeted advertising. On the right here, we're showing how Facebook is displaying ads, and behind these ads are deep links. So on the far right is Jack Threads. So if you click Shop Now in the Jack Threads app, it will actually open the app to the shopping screen. So we can actually use deep links for the ads where we're targeting users. And once we have these users that we actually want to re-engage with, we can show them ads and then send them into the app to the specific screens. And we're going to touch more about this on this idea of using deep links with advertising more in depth here in a minute. So deep links for advertising. So a lot of the big platforms are allowing users to share content in your Facebook newsfeed, in your Twitter newsfeed, in Google search. So that way, if you're consuming content from those various sources and you click on a link, you can actually get right into the in-app experience if you have the app installed. But the same can be done when you're actually out there actively advertising your apps. So if you're displaying ads out in the ecosystem, instead of having the user just go to your mobile web experience if you have one, or perhaps even some landing page that says install the app, you can send them right into the app and to the specific content with that advertising. So there's two different ways we can use deep links for different campaign types. The first one is for user acquisition campaigns, and the second one is for re-engagement campaigns. So user acquisition campaigns are campaigns where the user has never installed the mobile app before. And when the user hasn't installed the mobile app before, they would need to go to the App Store to actually install the mobile app. Some interesting things can be done when you're actually using deep links in regards to user acquisition. Most of you probably don't know or haven't seen deep links used with user acquisition campaigns. And the reason for that is that both the Google Play Store and the iTunes App Store don't specifically support it. So the native functionality of the stores is user clicks on an ad, they don't have the app installed, well, they got to go to the App Store, they download the app, and then they open the app for the first time, and there's really no good ways to pass information about which screen you want to send the user to. So this is, although it is possible, this is an example of AVRB, and they're using deferred deep linking to actually, instead of on the left, would be a regular experience. The user doesn't have the app installed, they open the app, and they go right in through this little tutorial on how to use the AVRB app. What they've done is Tanya over there has actually recommended one of her friends to download and install the AVRB app, and on first app load for Tanya's friend, it's showing, hey, Tanya actually recommended you download and install this app, and then how would you like to sign in? And so the thing about why it's called deferred deep linking when we're talking about deep linking with user acquisition campaigns is because there's an app store in the middle of opening the app. So this is actually a diagram that shows deferred deep linking with Google Play. So user clicks on the ad. Specifically with Google Play, you're gonna stick the parameters about which screen you want to send the user to in the actual Google Play install refer. User then goes to the Google Play Store. They download the app, such as Guilt, and then they can pull the values about which screen they should send the user to from the Google Play install refer, and then they can actually install the app. So a little bit more complicated, and when we get over to iOS, it's even more complicated. So with iOS, a user would see the app, and then a third party would actually need to hold this information about which deep link URL the user should go to after app install. User goes to the iTunes App Store, they download the app, then a third party needs to be used to basically attribute this install back to the click. And when we do that, we can actually get the deep link URL that the user should go to, and then the SDK can tell the app where to actually redirect the user to. So it gets a little bit more complicated when we're talking about user acquisition campaigns, and which is why most of you are probably familiar with using deep link campaigns or deep links for re-engagement campaigns. So it gets a little bit more easier when you're specifically using deep links for re-engagement campaigns. So here we have a diagram of an app, and the user installs the app, they open the app, they view a product, and then say they close the app, they don't come back for a week to 2 weeks, and we want to go and display an ad to this user, get them to open the app again, and see that product again in the app. So we can actually, this ad out there, we can actually display an ad to the user, and when they click on that ad, we can actually open the app to that specific screen in the app, and they can view that product. So using deep link campaigns or deep links with re-engagement campaigns provide a really good user experience to get the user back into the app after they've seen an ad. One thing to touch on the actual routing parameters. So the routing parameters are everything after the actual schema. So in an example here in the bottom, it says deep link URL, guild / or colon / Everything after that is the routing parameters. So it's good. One thing to, when you're thinking about implementing your deep link campaigns, is if you have your web URL, you want your deep link URL, if possible, to follow the same syntax. So that way, people that are linking to inside your app can more easily access the content as they would expect to on your website. And the reason for this, for this specific step, is if you really want to create dynamic links or dynamic ads back into your content, you're going to want to make sure that your deep links are easy to match up with ads. The next thing, which is really cool, is that in these routing parameters, we can also include product IDs. So that way, if the user, Amazon does this a lot with their products. If you're on Amazon.com and say you're viewing a new pair of running shoes, then for some reason, then you're viewing a few other news websites, those running shoes, the specific running shoes will show up on an ad and you can buy them on Amazon. So these routing parameters, you could actually pass in the ID of the product right into the deep link URL, and then when the user saw that ad and they clicked on it, you could actually get them to open the app right to that specific product. And the third thing that the routing parameters are good for is it actually allows third parties to pass in additional data or attribution. So in this case here, this is a guilt app or a deep link for guilt, and at the end there's two different examples. One is where a third party is passing in a click ID. The other one is just saying this app open is from publisher AdWords. So there's a pretty cool on because there's no app store in the middle between ad and app open, and the process is ad to app open. There's no app store. We can actually improve the attribution for re-engagement. So attribution for re-engagement is determined on app open from a deep link, and we can actually have one-to-one accuracy, whereas attribution for user acquisition campaigns gets a little tricky depending on what platform you're on and where the user is coming from, if they're coming from mobile web or mobile app. When we're actually talking about re-engagement campaigns, as long as the user has the app installed, if they're clicking on a deep link URL and opening the app, we can attribute the fact that they open the app from a specific source every time with one-to-one accuracy. This kind of shows, this is a nice table chart of the different attribution methods that most companies are using to actually attribute re-engagement campaigns. So there's 4 main attribution methods. There's the Google install refer. That one only works for install your user acquisition campaigns on Google Play. There's identifier matching, so both iOS and Apple, or iOS and Google Play now have their own platforms with identifiers for advertisers. There's also fingerprint matching, and then there's this last one, which is basically a deep link URL with some sort of click ID, which is what we just talked about. So retargeting with deep links, how does it work? So if we want to display an ad to a user, and we want the ad to be targeted, and so that way when they see the ad, we can get them to open up a specific screen in the app. So in this diagram, we have a user installs the mobile app, they open the app, and then they view a product. Well, if you're using a third party, or you're working with a platform who you have their SDK installed, they're going to be, depending on how you implement those SDKs, they're going to be measuring when the user opens the app. They're going to be measuring possibly when that user views a product, and they're going to be collecting all that data about those users. Inside the platform, depending on what platform you're actually using for retargeting, you can then create user segments and for users that have done certain things, and then display ads to those users. And when those ads are displayed to those users, they click on the deep link, and this time they can actually open to the product view page and purchase it. So there's several different types of popular campaigns for re-engagement. The first one is people who did or didn't use the app recently. So we want to target people that haven't used the app in the last 7 days to get them to come back and use the app again. Another use case is we want people with an older app version to actually update their app to a newer version. This is becoming less relevant though, as more of the platforms are doing auto update. But something that has been big in the past. Another one is people that took a specific action. So this was kind of relevant to the last slide we were just talking about. A user looked at X product, and then we want to show them an ad if we see that user again and they haven't made a purchase, to get them to actually purchase that product. And that goes along the lines with the last one, so people who search or view a specific product in the app. So this is just a screen capture. So if you're actually using, if you're setting up retargeting campaigns with Twitter or Google AdWords, this is how Google AdWords allows you to set up these retargeting campaigns. So you can define people who did or didn't do something in the app, and then you could get them to use a deep link URL to open the app. This is Facebook's process, so you can create an audience, usually from a data file and a custom audience. That's primarily where most of mobile app tracking clients, how they create their audiences. And once they've created the audience, then they can target them with targeted ads and use a deep link URL to get them to open the app. These are some of the top companies for retargeting. So Twitter ads has been, as John talked about, has been a big component of deep links. They recently bought Tap Commerce, so they're going at it together. Chartboost just released some retargeting campaigns. InMobi, AppLove, and Mob Partner, Facebook, and of course Google AdWords. Retargeting with event data. So this just kind of talks, specifically shows how that data gets over to those partners that you're going to be working with. So again, user opens the app, they see a product, there's an SDK or some form of way to collect this data. This data gets sent to the ad platform. They then target those users. When the users see the ad, they actually click on the deep link and open the app. And then, so when that user actually opens the app after they see the ad, that's typically when you would attribute that this open, and any events after that are then attributed to that specific publishing partner. There's one thing that you should take into account. So not only should you think about how you're setting up your deep link URL structure to expose your content for everybody to link to, you're also going to want to think about which events you're measuring in order for retargeting. So this is a pretty big list of about 17 events that you should be measuring depending on your app. And then if you are measuring this data, you can send this data to your advertising partners, so that way they can actually retarget users based on any of these behavioral data points, and then display an ad and get the user to open a deep link right into the app to a specific screen. And this is just it gives a little bit more detail. So if they're on the ad, or prior to that, user installs the ad, they see an open, they're viewing a product and it's ID 10599. We send that data off to the ad platform. Well, we want to retarget that user specifically back to that handbag in the Guilt app. Or when they click on the ad for that handbag, we can actually retarget them to that specific screen in the app. So that's the foundation of deep linking, and hopefully there's a lot of we've touched on a lot of various topics on how to expose the deep links and also how we can use deep linkings for advertising campaigns, improving conversion rates, and improving user experience. So we have time for a few questions. So the first question is, to construct trackable deep link URLs, do you add in the same parameters as you would with the App Store's URL? So an App Store URL is going to be to the App Store, and iTunes or Google Play has defined which data you can send into the App Store and then get that data out. A deep link URL is up to you and your app developers to define, and then you can define which data should be included in the URLs. John gave a list of a few different resources that are helpful for that. One of them is mobileappprojects.org. Also, Facebook has their open source community for applinks.org. So there's a few different resources out there to help you structure your deep link URLs. The second question, any best practices to be aware of? For example, I'd assume you want to target people who are already logged in or have the app open with deep links. So yeah, so this goes back to the last couple of slides where we were talking about how do we target users and then get them to see those targeted ads. So how you do that is you're taking the data of those users that already have the app installed, and you're sending that data over to your advertising partners that you're working with. So either you're using a third party to send that data to them, like a mobile app tracking, or you're also or you have Facebook's SDK installed or some other SDK installed, and so they're collecting all this data about these users, and then once they have this data, then you can create what's custom user segments. Google Ads refers to them as audiences, and so you have these audiences of people that are actually have your app installed, and once you have these audiences, you can then create targeted campaigns to display targeted ads to, and then when they click on those targeted ads, deep link URLs will actually open. And the third question is, how does deep linking interact with the new the targeting module? I'm not specifically sure what that's in reference to, but yeah, deep linking is a valuable part, an important part of creating retargeting campaigns. Because when you do know that the user has an app installed, you're going to want to use a deep link to get them to the most relevant screen within the app. And now, yeah, there's a few more questions that I'm going to pass over to John to answer.
All right, thanks, Lucas. So next question, how can deep linking benefit mobile publishers or app developers that sell their inventory to make a profit, and how can they control the data that they're sharing with advertisers? So maybe I'll split that up into two pieces. First, how can they control the data they're sharing with advertisers? And second, how can deep linking actually benefit these mobile publishers? So I think first order, a lot of the way that you can there's two fundamental types of data that you can use to have people target your inventory. The first is behavioral data, which I think which is covered by a lot of what Lucas just described in awesome amount of detail. And the second order is then actually enabling to be targeted based on the context of your app itself. And certainly this is something that's very new and still a kind of developing space, but you can imagine if you can actually have deep linking set up in your app, then you can actually enable people to target their ads based on what a user is looking at. So for example, if a user is reading about a particular music artist in your app, you can imagine being able to show them an ad that's targeted based on that specific music artist. So I think that's some of the things we've started to see people get excited about building on top of this new discovery layer that deep linking enables. Next question is how can you determine whether an app is installed from the browser? So unfortunately, that is not a functionality that is possible on either Android or iOS. The best practice on how you can actually do that is actually having, trying to open an app or from the browser and then actually falling back into a website if that's not possible. There's actually a couple solutions that have been built out to enable that. URX has a free product called OmniLinks, which does this. There's another third-party solution called DeepLinkMe, which also offers this as a solution. But again, ultimately what this enables is sending a single link, attempting to open it in the app, and if that doesn't work, catching the error, and then using that to do user agent-based redirection into the mobile website. Third question, are there any suggestions on what to use for creating a router or a dispatcher to specific views within native applications? And I think as Lucas mentioned earlier on, and certainly I talked about earlier in the slides, I think there's a few awesome routers that you can use that are all open source. So there's mobiledeeplinking.org, which has a great proposal on how you can do this for your application. URX has built a Turnpike solution that does something similar, as has, again, a third party called DeepLinkMe, which also has the same routing functionality really well built out. So another question came through, where does URX fit into this ecosystem and what's our offer? So great question, whoever asked that. So basically, as I described early on, URX built the world's first mobile search engine for developers, which actually, so we've gone out and actually indexed every app to understand the content that exists inside of it, and actually built a knowledge graph on top of this to actually understand how different entities are linked together across the mobile app ecosystem. And then basically with this, we actually enable developers to build their apps to actually discover and link to content or actions that exist within other apps on a user's device. So ultimately, a lot of these app partnerships that were described, such as Google Maps to Uber, are things that we've actually been able to build on top of our platform at full scale, where it's not just a one-to-one linking where you have to go figure out somebody's deep link scheme, attempt to figure out whether their app's on their phone, and build your own internal search engine to figure out what the best place is to take a user. Basically, by working with URX on top of our API, this is all functionality that you get for free. If you have any more specific questions about that, feel free to send me an email, john@urx.com. Next question, is app indexing limited to Android apps only? So today, with Google's offer on app indexing, yes, it is only limited to Android apps. I would have to imagine that they're thinking about how to make this cross-platform, but because they have more full-stack control over the experience, Google has decided to start only within the Android app ecosystem. The app indexing that URX does, however, does work across platform, so our solution is something that affects both iOS and Android developers.
Awesome. We have time for 2 more questions, and that particularly relate to user acquisition campaigns. So the next question is, can you explain the challenges with customer acquisition again and the ways to get around them? So if you're going to be using deep link URLs when you're actually acquiring new users, the problem is that you have a store in the middle. You have the Google Play Store, or you have the Apple iTunes App Store. And you can in Google Play pass some data into the Google Play installer but you can't pass any data into the iTunes Store. And then when the user actually opens the app, you have to do some tricky things to get that deep link URL back out to then open the specific screen on first app open that they want. So if it's an Android app on Google Play, you'd have to get the value from the Google Play install referrer, parse it out, and then you can actually open the screen the relevant screen accordingly. On iOS, since you can't pass any data into the App Store, a third party would actually need to, or you could do it yourself, but basically when a user clicks on the ad going to the iTunes store, in that link, part of that data would be after install, what's the deep link URL we want the user to be sent to. You'd hold on to that because you can't give it to iTunes. They can't do anything with it. And then user goes to iTunes, they download and install the mobile app. On first app open, they open the app. We now need to go figure out, did this user click on an ad? And if they did, is there a deep link URL associated with it? So primarily it would be a third party that would have that information. You send the install to them. They would go, yep, this partner is responsible, and we want to send them to this deep link URL, and then you would take that information and send them to the appropriate screen. And so that's why, because the stores are involved, that's why they call it deferred deep linking or delayed deep linking, because the user's just not clicking on an ad and opening the app. There's actually a store in the middle. And yeah, so the second question, what are the cliff notes of why attribution on re-engagement deep linking is so much simpler than attribution for deep linking for user acquisition campaigns? And so again, there's just a store in the middle. You need to figure out where you want to store this deep link for user acquisition campaigns. And then after they install the app for the first time, then get that deep link back and then send them to the screen. Whereas with re-engagement campaigns, user already has the app installed. So as soon as they click on the app automatically opens, and the app already has the technology built in there to redirect them to the specific screen based on the actual deep link URL. So that's all the questions, all the time we have for questions today. We appreciate everybody for tuning in here for this webinar on deep linking, and certainly send John or I an email for any follow-up questions, and we'll be happy to help.